I would love to introduce you now to Naomi Kent. Naomi is the Senior Technician at the Printmaking Department at Birmingham City University. She specialises in letterpress printing and, in particular, non-linear typesetting, and is inspired by artistic printers of the late 19th century. Her MA degree looked into reviving some of these traditional obsolete printing processes using equipment available at the local School of Jewellery to replicate some of these techniques. Her approach is experimental and breaks the traditional typesetting rules by bending the brass rules. She's also known as Ink Squasher, which is her online handle and her studio name. So I'm delighted to welcome Naomi here today. So over to you, Naomi. Thank you.
Wow, hi everyone. They were really hard acts to follow. It's really great to be here. Thank you, Becky, for inviting me. So yes, this is me. I am Ink Squasher. I would describe myself as a letterpress artist, a typesetter of sorts. I basically fiddle around with movable type. This is also me. I am one very tired mother to a toddler, a 12-week-old baby, a wife, a friend. I try and do all the washing, all the cooking, all the cleaning. We live in half a house because we are renovating, trying to run a business. And this week I went back to work, which was great. You do need a work-life balance, and this week I got that. It was great. So what is letterpress printing? I'm sure most of you already know, but for those that don't, it's the physical setting of individual letters that are made from wood and metal alongside the line and letter spacing, which is invisible to us when we are designing digitally, the surface of which is inked with a brayer or the rollers of a press and then printed. Ink is mixed by hand, and depending on what I'm working on, I mix it to Pantone. So the Pantone book tells me what colours I need to mix and what percentage of those colours I need to add together to get the exact colour that I'm after. This is where the inspiration of my name comes from as well, Ink Squasher, like squashing all the different inks together to get the correct colour. So traditionally, wood type or display type, because of its size, would have been used for posters such as this to advertise the theatre. A metal type, which is made from lead up to 72 points, was used for setting smaller stuff like book text, leaflets, brochures, flyers, such as this one. So what attracts me to letterpress printing? A lot of it is the maths. I quite like maths. I was quite good at it at school. And the most trusty piece of equipment in the print room is your type ruler. Everything is about sizing, I guess, in letterpress printing. Measurements are in points and picas. There's 12 points in every pica. So if we come back to this image, each line is set to a certain width. Type is spaced out to fit the hole, to fit the width or line space to ensure it fits the length of the column. Then all the different sections, they're spaced to ensure that they fit the width and the length of the printing parameters, ensuring that everything fits to a satisfying rectangle of solid type. So like I said, I like maths, and typesetting's like a little mathematical puzzle with a wonderfully satisfying solid structure of type, which can be as complex as you like. And when you're working, it's easy for you to lose your head in what you're doing. It's like a form of therapy, a form of like type therapy. And research shows it's good for your mental health to work with your hands. So typesetting for me is one way of keeping a healthy mind. So like Becky said, I'm very lucky to teach letterpress printing and other printmaking techniques at Birmingham City University. I get a lot of people that ask me, but why? Like, where is the relevance today in letterpress printing? There's still relevance, obviously. Letterpress printing is a vehicle for visual communication. Working physically with individual type and having to think about the placement informs students' digital and creative practice, and it introduces the physical properties that they are learning about digitally. It's also a form of craft and artistic expression, all of which are relevant today. Sometimes all the time, I'll have a little project on the go in the corner of the room that I'm working on, and some students that are coming in to do other different types of printmaking will be like, oh, can you show me like how you do that? And I'm like, I always say to students, you've got to know the rules in order to bend the rules. It's not all showing on there. It says when you know the rules, you can then bend the rules. So I'm a firm believer, like, you've got to teach the foundations of typesetting. We've got to start from the beginning, and then when the students know the foundations, then they can use those building blocks to then let their creativity go wild, and then they can bend the rules. So my work is integral to rule bending, as you will see in a little bit. But before I want to talk about my work, I really want to show you some letterpress luminaries that I am inspired by. What I do is nothing new at all. In fact, it's just a really lame version of the people that came before me. So this is some work by Albert Schiller. He was a typographic art director for Advertising Agency's Service Company, and it was while he was here he began playing with ornaments and rules to create what he would coin type pictures. In his essay on the use of type ornaments today, Schiller states, "My own use of ornament as unorthodox decoration in the type pictures is the remit of the fortuitous combination of circumstance, accident, and the general unrivaled use of the medium." Now, as a letterpress printer, his images just absolutely blow my mind. What I wish Schiller could have done is, in the 1930s, had a smartphone and taken pictures of the lockup of the types, of the type that's used to create these images. It interests me, probably more than the prints, what the lockup looks like. This is where the craft lays in letterpress, and it's where I can learn from, it's where I have learned from, and I find it quite inspiring and interesting. So yes, this is another piece of his work. This is a piece that he created at Christmas to send out to the customers at the agency that he worked for. And this image inspired me for a series of prints I was doing on Bob Marley at the time. So this is my tribute to Albert Schiller. On the right-hand side, we have what we call the lockup. It's the locking up of the type. And I'll always document it. I find that the 3D collective gathering of type and metal very satisfying, and it's more beautiful than the outcome a lot of the time. This is where the time consumption part lays. So here I use metal type combined with ornaments and border units. These would have originally been used for borders back in the day and ornamentation on leaflets, etc. There's a brass circle that I've used here, and in order to keep typesetting simple, I've just taken a piece of wood and made a hole, inserted the brass circle to enable easy typesetting. Typesetting is easy when it's all straight and linear. Here, just where I wanted some diagonal type, a couple of wedges either side, again, just so I could set type with ease linear. So in the late 19th century, letterpress printing, it went a bit nuts. Letterpress printers had lithographers and engravers as competitors, because their designs, they were hand-drawn, they could be fluid and extremely decorative with tightly integrated type and ornament. Similarly, the engraving process employed the use of metal or wood plates that were incised by hand, and so could also be produced free-form decorative type and ornament and images. Letterpress printers needed to compete with the detail and colour of these processes, which could be imposed composed freely and were unrestricted by the fixed axes of their medium. Rivalry between these printers is the cause of much of the experimentation of artistic printing from the late 1860s into the 1890s. So artistic printing is characterized by dense ornamentation, the use of many decorative typefaces, combination borders, compartmentalized spaces, bent rules, and unusual compositions. Artistic printing was primarily applied to the everyday ephemera, trade cards, advertising circulars, programs, and bills. Now, if only I could see the lockup of something like this with all the crazy bent rules, like I would learn so much from it, that's for sure. Just another one to whet your appetite because they're all just too good. This one, for me, this is just a great example of how nuts it went. This is just a trade card for some printers based in Edinburgh here in the UK, and they're using Japanese imagery. I imagine their local type founders as technological advances in casting got better and better. It's like, oh, we'll just cast them these ornate Japanese imagery, and I guess these printers are like, oh yeah, they're fantastic, they're amazing, yeah, we'll use those. A bit like 90s kids probably, when we were asked to use, when we were made to make posters at school, we'd be like, word art, wow, look at this. Yeah, use them all. And I feel like that's a bit like in the 1890s when So here's a photo of some type candy for you. This is one of about 10 drawers that I have of ornaments that I use in my work. It's really difficult to get hold of 19th century ornaments. I'm limited to what I can achieve. I don't have much. But these limitations, they push your boundaries. So a few examples of my work inspired by these artistic printers. Like I said, I'm limited, 130 years on from the artistic printing period. It's hard to come across many ornaments and borders. This short-lived period was soon considered quite awful, and much of the type hasn't survived. And even when it does come up for sale, it's super expensive. I can't afford it. So here I've set some type on a curve using some brass setting rules that I was lucky enough to win the bid on eBay. So there's no real right or wrong way to lock up type when you're going off-piece. That is type that isn't linear. You just don't want it to move, really. So I've used some 90-degree corner angles and leading to set my type in place here. These brass setting rules coming in handy again. So they are lower than type high so that they don't print. This is a lockup from my lockdown project. So these are some brass rules which I've made myself. I'll talk about that a bit later. These are type high, so they do print. And I've metered the edges so that they have a 45-degree angle, enabling me to put the two together to create the smooth meeting of the two rules. There's some ornaments in there that date to the late 19th century, type cast in the 20th century, and ornaments cast in the 21st century. So this is a print spanning 3 centuries. It's not a print. I haven't got an image of the print because I lost my phone a couple of weeks ago, and I'm that person that doesn't back my phone up, so there would have been a lot more images in this project, in this presentation. I did bring the print of this book and a few of the projects that I talk about, which are lacking images on the presentation, but I do have them in person, so if you did want to see more, I have brought them along with me. Another one from the lockdown book, this one says, I didn't have time. More ornaments from the 19th century. So artistic printers, they often homemade their own brass rules and borders by bending and manipulating these lengths of brass into curls, curves, and even images. Printers who decorated with bent rules were known as twisters, Their crimping and bending efforts were supported by specialist mechanisms such as the Earhart wrinkler and the Bartholomew twister, shown here. And here's a couple of examples of their amazing work. So if we look at the top trade card, all those incredible curls. On either side of the town, at the bottom here, they've got like some crimped brass rules. And on the trade card at the bottom, the P, that would have been made with some bent brass that they've done themselves. And also up here is a composing stick, which type is traditionally set on. That's all made from bent brass rules as well. So I find all this super inspiring, and it blew my mind. So then I wanted to have a go at some of these techniques, but without a sniff of a wrinkler or a twister in sight in this country to get my hands on. I turned to the jewellery department at the university to see if there was any equipment that they had there that I could try and use to recreate some of these techniques. And it turns out it's entirely possible to crimp, curve and bend strips of brass. So they had a huge sheet of brass, which we were able to cut down into strips. These strips needed to be cut to the exact right height of type, which is 0.9/18 of an inch. So it was a bit challenging for the technician, not me. I just stood there while they did it. So they cut brass strips for me, loads of them. I then annealed them. That's kind of like heating it up with a big flame, so they became softer and malleable, so I could work with it. So this is me. This is my very first attempt. This is a brass rod which I just sawed a slit into, which I could insert the brass strips around, so I could have something to bend the strips around. So on the right-hand side is what a finished product, I guess, that I used in my obsolete project, which I'll show on the next slide. And on the left is, crimping brass rules, super easy. It's just with a set of pliers. So that one was easy. Who needs the wrinkler? This is a page from my obsolete project. This is how I used the brass rules that I'd bent. Again, it's kind of just anyone's guess, really, how to lock them up. There's no real right and wrong. So I've just used a few strips of lead in between each one for spacing, and then just some spacing materials either side to lock it into place. Now, this piece of equipment was amazing. Again, these are all bits of equipment that they use in the jewellery school, not as I intended to use them. But this is a modern day crimper. So you just insert the brass into one end, you turn the handle, and it just comes out crimped the other end, like my hair used to look in the 90s at the weekends. And printed, the brass rule just looks a bit like a wave. This video did have sound. I don't know if it will play, but it's a very pleasing sound if it does, if you can hear it. No. So yeah, I need to get me one of those. I just want to speak to you about the work of Henk van Otterloo and J.H. Moosman. So their project is entitled, I can't pronounce this properly, Ornamentenboek, it's Dutch, which literally translates Ornament Picture Book. So their book consists of 9 prints made between 1976 and 1982, and they printed it in an edition of 100. They referred to letterpress printing as donkey work, which I quite liked. In the early 80s, printing techniques changed drastically. Moosman and Otterloo said, now that everything is done photomechanically, our donkey work might no longer be recognised as handmade. So they had their work and their technique recorded in a legal deed, and they documented all their lockups, which is great. We can learn from this. I have nothing else to say about their work, but I wanted to include more pictures because they are just wonderful. So this research, it culminated in a response book to Otterloo and Mersman's work. It's entitled Obsolete, because in it I illustrate obsolete words. This image here is illustrating the word lunting, which means to walk whilst smoking a pipe. And I do feel like we need a new word for walking whilst vaping. Maybe I'll come up with one. So the title of this book, it's also a reflection of my frustrations as a printer in the 21st century, because certain ornaments are now obsolete, certain equipment is now obsolete, certain machinery is now obsolete, which makes certain tasks or printing techniques, which I have been inspired by in my research, sometimes very difficult to replicate in my own work. But some equipment that I am able to replicate, though, is this laser-cut copy of the Figgins Foundry angled and curved furniture. So this enables me to set type on a curve or on an angle. And I just thought, right, well, as a typesetter, if I want to set type that's non-linear, how many other letterpress printers are out there that also want to set type with ease on an angle or a curve? So this is something that I sell to other members of the letterpress community. So here you can see the use of the curved and angular pieces of furniture, how I use them in my work. This image depicts lumming, which means heavy rain. So to set type like this is super, super time consuming. So I first construct the character, which I then loosely hold it in place with some typesetting material. I then take this away bit by bit as I insert the leading and the letter L for the rain, which is these diagonal bits you can see around the edge here. And then once it's all locked up, I take a proof so that I can see what it looks like, to see if I'm happy with it. So without getting the ink out, because that's super messy, I just use carbon paper and run that through the press. So then I can see what it looks like without having to get messy. Then I make alterations according to how I want the image to look. And then when I'm happy with it, I have to take it all apart again, because then I decide which parts of the image I want what colour. So, orange and blue. So then I will take out all the orange parts of the image, and I will insert spacing material that's exactly the same size into the image, and then I'll print the blue parts. So I'll print a run of, say, 50 of just the blue. I then take all the blank spacing out, insert the orange back into the image, so I've got my image back, and then take out all the blue parts and fill those with spacing materials that's the same size. And then I will print, and then I'll print the other colour. But as well as making sure you infill it with the exact size of spacing, you have to make sure that the lockup is on the exact same part of the press, so that's got to be locked up within the press, and then the paper has got to be inserted into the press at exactly the same point as well, just so you get a good registration of the two colours so that they register well. Sometimes it doesn't register well because I make silly mistakes. It happens. This is a project I've been working on over the last few years. Each winter I will do a winter print, which I'll send out at Christmas. So these images were created in the same way as the previous one. This time I'm using full stops to create the snow, and to create the organic different sizes of snow falling, I use full stops from about 5 different fonts, which then I have to write down and make sure that all those full stops go back in the correct type cases. I have used homemade brass strips to create the jacket here and the face and the little ice skates. Oh, here you can see them. I'm really no illustrator at all. I cannot draw. I don't really enjoy drawing. So I draw a very, very, very simple image of a figure. It's very basic. And then I use that to bend the strips around according to what I've drawn, and that helps me to cut the brass strips down to the right size and bend it down to the right shapes. And it is Struggle City, trying to get them all to join up so you can't see any gaps, which sometimes you can. This was last year's. No, not last year's. I didn't do one last year. A couple of years ago. Yes, because we're nearly at Christmas. Sledging. Oh, next project. So in a past life, pre-children, I used to practice aerial silks, and that's like acrobatics on a long dangly piece of material. And I was surrounded by very talented people practicing all kinds of circus skills, which then inspired me for my project called the Type Circus. So, as never seen before, here we have Ringmaster Renner introducing to you Baskerville's Balancing Act, Frutiga the Fire Eater, and Caslon's Contortion Act. So for the background of these ones, I've introduced just a bit of lino, a circular piece of lino with a starburst lino, one printed over the other, one in a darker colour, and then I printed the type on top. I really struggle doing faces for characters and hands. That's why all my winter prints, I don't know if you noticed, all the characters had mittens on. Oh, I don't know how to do hands. So for this, for Baskerville's eye, I wanted it to make it look like his eye was looking up in concentration at his foot. So I've used a Bodoni C because it's got a heavy weighted curl up at the top. So the idea is his eye was looking up. And for the hands, I've just used some stacked brackets to give the effect of gripped hands when you're doing a handstand. And sometimes I just can't find the type that I need in the drawers, letters or whatever. So then I just use brass strips to construct parts of the image. So this face is largely made up of brass strips, which I've cut down to size. And on the left-hand side, this is something I stumbled upon on the internet. I'd never seen or heard one before, and even today I've never seen one in the wild. It's called an adjustable circular chase. The idea is you can set type inside of it, and you can move the whole thing, so you can set type at an angle, or you can set type on it and repeatedly printing it at varying intervals of degree separation, so you can get repetitive rotational printing. So with access to a laser printer, or laser cutter even, I've made my own version here. This is something else that I sell to the letterpress community. I brought one with me if anyone wants to see what it looks like. I also use it in my teaching just to inject a little bit of fun into typesetting. So once the students have learned the foundations of typesetting, they've learned to set type linear. Even though when we use it, type is still set very simple, so basic typesetters can use it. Printing rotationally, you can get some real fun, you can create some real fun prints. So the image here that you can't see very well, this was created using it. And I used it for my latest project this summer, which was entitled Bodoni Waltz. So I take each letter of the alphabet in the Bodoni font and print them every 36 degrees, creating like a visual symphony. This project, it's all about appreciating the craftsmanship of typography and the elegant curves and the sharp angles that Bodoni has created. And the result is a 27-page concertina book. Each page is a different letter. I did have a beautiful video of videoing the whole book so you could see them, but I lost that with my phone, didn't I? So, yeah. Finally, this is my longest project ever. It started in 2016, still not finished. So just linking back to the word obsolete, and not being able to get my hands on some of the glorious ornaments that I see in the specimen books or Schiller's work, for example, I wanted to design and have cast the traditional way some of my own ornaments and really bring the book together by having ornaments from the 19th century, ornaments from the mid-century, some newly cast monotype ornaments, and some newly designed and cast ornaments. But I never had the matrix engraved and ready for them to be used in the project. Ironically, I wanted to show my obsolete book that letterpress is still alive and well, and it does continue to be innovative. So on the left here are the Matrix. They are engraved by Ed of Swamp Press in the USA. The ornaments are cast by Andrew of Carpathian Type Foundry here in the UK, and I've designed and printed the packaging. Here they are. I really just need to get my ass into gear and contact Andrew, and we just need to spend a day together casting this type. Yeah, I just need some time, basically. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening.